Hello, truth seekers. Welcome to our channel. For over 600 years, the Shroud of Turin has haunted humanity. This 14-foot linen cloth, preserved in Turin Cathedral, Italy, bears the ghostly image of a man who endured brutal torture. His wounds mirror the Gospels: a crown of thorns, a pierced side, and nail marks through the wrists, not the palms as medieval art depicted. Is this the burial shroud of Jesus Christ? Or is it a masterful forgery, crafted to deceive millions? The cloth's very existence is a paradox, revered by popes, studied by Nobel Prize-winning scientists, and yet dismissed by skeptics as a medieval hoax. What makes this relic so dangerously compelling? The shroud's origins are shrouded in obscurity. It first appeared in 1354 in Lille, France, owned by Geoffrey de Charnay, a knight whose family allegedly guarded it during the Crusades. But where? Was it before? Some theories suggest it was hidden in Constantinople, stolen during the Fourth Crusade in 1204. Others claim it was preserved by the Knights Templar, who worshipped a mysterious head rumored to be the shroud itself. What we know is that it survived disasters. A 1532 fire left symmetrical burn marks, and silver coins melted onto the cloth. Yet the image remained intact. Was this mere luck or divine intervention? In 1978, a team of 40 scientists, STRP, Shroud of Turin Research Project, spent 120 hours studying the cloth. Their findings shocked the world. No pigments, no brushstrokes, no dyes. The image isn't painted. It's a surface oxidation of the linen fibers, as if a mysterious energy, heat, light, or radiation, scorched the man's likeness onto the fabric. Even more astonishing, the blood. Microchemical tests confirmed it's real human blood, with serum halos around wounds, consistent with a beating heart still pumping as the blood dried. But whose blood? And how did it penetrate the cloth in a way that defies medieval technology? In 1988, the shroud was carbon dated to 1260 to 1390 AD, branding it a medieval fake. But critics erupted. The sample was taken from a repaired edge, contaminated by centuries of handling and fire damage. New studies, like the 2013 paper in Radiocarbon, suggest the 1988 results were skewed by cotton fibers woven into the repair. Meanwhile, the Sudarium of Oviedo, a cloth believed to have covered Jesus' face, matches the shroud's bloodstain patterns. If both cloths are authentic, how did a medieval forger replicate first-century Jewish burial practices and coordinate blood chemistry across continents? The image itself is a scientific enigma. It's a perfect photographic negative, invisible to the naked eye until 1898, when Secundopia snapped the first photo. The man's anatomy is flawless. A Roman flagrum's whip marks, a spear wound between the 5th and 6th ribs, and legs unbroken, details matching the Gospel of John. Pollen grains on the cloth include species native to Jerusalem, Edessa, and Constantinople. Even the 3D information encoded in the image, revealed through VP8 analysis, suggests it was formed by a body radiating energy. Could this be the ultimate proof of the resurrection? Millions believe the shroud is a divine fingerprint, a message from antiquity. Skeptics argue it's a puzzle waiting to be solved. Yet, despite decades of attempts, no one has replicated it. Modern scientists, using lasers, UV light, and thermal radiation, failed to mimic its unique properties. As we explore the next chapters, ask yourself, what if the greatest event in human history left its mark on a simple linen cloth? The answer could shake the foundations of science and faith. In 1988, the world held its breath as 3 laboratories, in Oxford, Tucson, and Zurich, tested the shroud's age using carbon-14 dating. The results? The cloth dated between 1260 and 1390 ADE, labeling it a medieval forgery. The Vatican itself, called it settled science. But the story didn't end there. Critics pointed to a critical flaw. The sample came from the lower left corner, an area repaired in the 16th century after a fire. Medieval weavers often used cotton and dye to patch damaged fabrics. Could this contamination have skewed the results? New evidence emerged in 2005 when chemist Ray Rogers analyzed unused Gut C14 samples. He discovered vanillin, a compound that vanishes from linen after 1,300 years in the tested fragment. The main shroud cloth, however, lacked vanillin, suggesting it's 3,000 years old. Rogers concluded the carbon dating sample was not representative of the entire cloth. Suddenly, the medieval hoax theory began to unravel. In 2013, a breakthrough study published in Radiocarbon re-examined the shroud. Researchers found that the 1988 sample contained cotton fibers and gum, materials absent from the rest of the cloth. Medieval artisans often mixed cotton with linen for repairs, which would make the sample appear younger. Advanced spectral imaging also revealed that the shroud's weave matches 1st century Jewish textiles found in Masada, Israel. Is the carbon dating a red herring? Skeptics counter, if the shroud is ancient, how did a medieval artist replicate 1st century crucifixion wounds? The answer lies in the details. Medieval forgers would have depicted nail wounds in the palms, a common artistic trope. The shroud shows wounds in the wrists, which modern forensics confirm as the correct location to support a body's weight. On a cross, even the blood flow patterns match post-mortem physiology. Could a 14th century artist possess 20th century medical knowledge? Then there's the image itself. In 2012, Italian scientists used UV lasers to mimic the shroud's oxidation patterns. They concluded that the energy required to scorch the image exceeds 200 billion watts per square centimeter, a level impossible for medieval technology. Some theorize a coronal discharge during the resurrection, imprinting the body's image onto the cloth. Others suggest a Maillard reaction between amino acids and saccharides in the linen. But no experiment has fully replicated the shroud's unique properties. Today, the debate rages on. The shroud's 3D codification, revealed through NASA-developed VP8 analyzers, defies natural explanation. It's not a painting, a photograph, or a scorch mark. It's a mystery. As we move forward, consider this. What if the carbon dating controversy isn't a flaw, but a clue? Perhaps the shroud's greatest secret lies in its ability to challenge both science and faith. The truth about the Shroud of Turin may be written in its blood. While science searches for answers, theology sees a direct connection to the Passion of Christ. The details of the bloodstains are so precise that they defy simplistic explanations. Examined under microscopes, they reveal a stunning complexity. They are not just signs of torture, but a forensic map of a crucifixion. The Stirp team in 1978 determined that the blood on the shroud is real human blood, containing hemoglobin and bilirubin, proteins that indicate severe trauma. The stains were not painted. They penetrate the fibers of the linen as if the body had been wrapped while still bleeding. More intriguing, the halos of serum around the stains suggest that the blood clotted and then rehydrated, a phenomenon that occurs when a body stops bleeding. This contradicts the idea of a decomposing corpse, since the blood would have completely clotted. The flow patterns are also revealing. In the areas of the wrists where the nails would have pierced, blood ran down, indicating that the victim was in an upright position, as on the cross. Meanwhile, the stains on the back and shoulders suggest that the body was placed in a horizontal position after death. This duality, bleeding in life and after death, is consistent with the gospel accounts. Jesus was scourged, carried the cross, and only then was he crucified. But science asks, how would a medieval forger replicate this? Modern forensics confirm that the lash marks on the shroud correspond to the flagrum taxillatum, a Roman whip with pieces of bone or metal, a detail unknown in medieval art, which depicted simple whips. Furthermore, the wounds on the top of the head, not a circular crown, but intertwined thorns, and the spear thrust on the right side of the chest, which pierced the lung and heart, are anatomically accurate. Even the absence of fractures in the cave, feet and legs, aligns with the account in John 19:33. They did not break his legs. Theology, however, goes further. Does the shroud bear a divine signature? Some point to the Shroud of Oviedo, a cloth that covered Jesus' face, mentioned in John 20:6-7. The bloodstains on the Shroud of Turin and the Shroud of Oviedo match in blood type, AB, and flow patterns as if they were part of the same burial ritual. Believers see this as proof of authenticity. Skeptics see it as a well-crafted coincidence. Science is also divided. In 2015, researchers at the University of Pavia analyzed blood using nanotechnology techniques and found that red blood cells were arranged in three-dimensional clusters, something impossible to replicate with medieval ink. Other studies suggest that the blood contained decomposition chemicals, but at levels inconsistent with a body left on a cross for hours. This fuels the theory that the body disappeared before decomposition could advance, reinforcing the resurrection narrative. But here's the paradox. If the shroud is a fraud, how can we explain that its bloodstains withstood mitochondrial DNA testing without revealing modern contamination? Or that the AB blood type, rare in first-century Jewish people, occurs in relics associated with Jesus? The answer may lie at the intersection of faith and science. The shroud does not prove the resurrection, but it does challenge us to explain its origin without invoking the supernatural. As scientists and theologians debate, one question remains. Why does the blood on the shroud seem to tell a story that transcends its time? In the next installment, we'll explore theories about the image of the man, a puzzle that not even artificial intelligence can replicate. The image of the man on the shroud is a scientific paradox. It is not a painting, not a stamp, not a photograph. It defies categorization. When Italian lawyer Secondo Pia photographed the shroud in 1898, he made a shocking discovery. The image on the photographic negative revealed a perfectly detailed human face, something impossible to create before the invention of the camera. How could a 14th century object contain a photograph, 500 years before technology existed? The answer lies in the structure of the image. Unlike a painting, which leaves layers of pigment, the shroud displays a superficial oxidation of the linen fibers as if each thread had been lightly toasted by an unknown energy. Studies with electron microscopes reveal that the image resides in a thin layer of starch and sugars on the surface of the fibers, a chemical process that no medieval artist could control. Furthermore, the image has no directionality. There are no brushstrokes, cast shadows, or points of light as in conventional works of art. In 1976, physicist John Jackson and his team used the VP8 image analyzer, a NASA technology, to map the density of the image. The result was surprising. The shroud encodes 3D information in the intensity of the tones. Darker areas correspond to parts of the body closest to the cloth, such as the nose, while lighter areas indicate distance, such as the cheekbones. This suggests that the image was formed by directional radiation, emitted perpendicular to the body, something incompatible with artistic methods. But what kind of radiation? Theories vary. Corona discharge, an intense electric field during the resurrection, ionizing the air and oxidizing the linen. Extreme UV radiation. Recent studies show that high-energy lasers can simulate parts of the image, but they would require 200 billion watts per cm2, power unattainable before the 20th century. Maillard reaction, a chemical reaction between amino acids in sweat and sugars in linen, a catalyzed by heat. But that doesn't explain the 3D encoding. Meanwhile, the anatomy of the man on the shroud defies medieval art. The body is in a strictly anatomical position. The shoulders are hunched over from the weight of the cross. The knees are slightly bent, as in a corpse, and the big toe is distorted, a detail that only modern medicine recognizes as the result of crucifixion. Even the man's height, 1.78 min, matches estimates of Jesus based on contemporary skeletons. The most controversial theory is resurrection imprinting. If Jesus' body disappeared, as described in the Bible, the energy released during the event could have imprinted the tissue. This idea gained traction in 2020 when Italian physicists simulated a radiation explosion on a virtual corpse and obtained an image similar to that on the shroud. But skeptics argue, if the resurrection emitted radiation, why are there no other similar phenomena recorded in history? The image also contains details invisible to the naked eye. In 2004, scientists discovered coins over the man's eyes, replicas of Roman denarii, minted by Pontius Pilate between 2932 AD. How would a medieval forger have access to these coins, whose designs were only rediscovered in the 20th century? In the end, the shroud remains an unbreakable code. It's not art, it's not science, it's not faith. It's a mystery that transcends categories. What if the answer lies not in the how, but in the why? In the next installment, we'll explore theories that connect the shroud to a larger plan, a message left for humanity. The Shroud of Turin is not just a scientific object, it is a mirror of faith. For millions, it transcends mere relic. It is a window into the greatest event in Christian history, the resurrection of Jesus. But how do we reconcile science with the supernatural? What if the shroud is not just evidence but an intentional message? The connection to the Gospels is undeniable. The body of the shroud bears 120 lash wounds, corresponding to the Roman scourging described in Matthew 27:26. The crown of thorns, interlaced rather than circular, aligns with the account in John 19:2. They twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head. Even the spear thrust on the right side, which pierced the pericardium, releasing fluid and blood, reflects John 19:34. Blood and water came out. To theologians, these details are not coincidences, but marks of divine authenticity. However, theology faces a paradox. If the shroud is real, it challenges the Christian doctrine that Jesus was resurrected in a glorified, not a physical body. How can we explain a shroud that wrapped a body that disappeared? Some suggest that the resurrection was not an instantaneous event, but a process that left an imprint on the cloth, a kind of material testimony to the supernatural. Others see the shroud as a symbol of the incarnation, God leaving a tangible mark of his passage on earth. The connection with other relics reinforces this idea. The Shroud of Oviedo, mentioned in John 20:7, covered the face of Jesus and contains bloodstains of the same type, AB, and patterns as the Shroud of Turin. The veil of Veronica, said to have been used to wipe Jesus' face on the way to Calvary, also shows a face consistent with that on the shroud. These relics, scattered across centuries and continents, form a trail of evidence that defies chance. But what does the shroud say about God? For theologian John Calvin, the shroud is idolatry, since the Bible forbids images. For Pope John Paul II, it is an icon written in blood, a bridge between faith and reason. In 2010, Pope Benedict XVI stated, "The shroud speaks to us of suffering, love, and forgiveness." This duality, an object of devotion and debate, reflects the tension between faith and the search for proof. Science, however, is not unaware of symbolism. In 2017, physicists proposed that the image on the shroud could be a mark of dark energy, a quantum phenomenon associated with the resurrection. Others suggest that the shroud was designed to be deciphered only in the modern era, when humanity would have sufficient technology to understand it. As historian Paul Badham said, "If God wanted to leave a message for the scientific age, the shroud would be perfect." But here's the deeper question. Why does the shroud exist? If it's authentic, it challenges the secularization of the modern world by offering a sign of transcendence. If it's fake, its complexity reveals the depth of the human search for meaning. In both cases, it forces us to confront eternal questions. Who are we? Why do we suffer? Is there something beyond matter? In the next installment, we'll explore the attempts to replicate the shroud and why they all failed. After all, if science can't explain it, is the answer beyond science? For decades, scientists and artists have tried to replicate the Shroud of Turin. If it is a medieval hoax, how come no one has been able to reproduce its image? In 1978, chemist Eric Jumper used a human cadaver and sculpting techniques to create a replica, but the result was disappointing. The image was superficial, lacking the 3D encoding or anatomical accuracy of the original. In 2005, Italian Luigi Garlaschelli tried a different approach. He painted a Byzantine icon with iron sulfate pigments and aged the fabric with sulfuric acid. Although his replica fooled some laymen, under a microscope, the differences were glaring. Coarse pigments, no oxidation in the fibers, and no response on 3D analyzers. The persistent failure reveals a fundamental problem. The shroud is not a work of art, but a physical-chemical phenomenon. To date, no technology, from lasers to 3D printers, has been able to replicate its unique combination of surface oxidation. The image exists only on the outermost layer of the fibers, which are 0.2 micrometers thick, 1/100th the thickness of a human hair. Lack of directionality, no brushstrokes, pigment diffusion, or light projection. De-information. The density of the image varies with distance from the body, something impossible to simulate with conventional techniques. In 2017, a team at the Georgia Tech Institute used silver nanoparticles to create a similar image, but the results required state-of-the-art equipment and controlled conditions, capabilities that were unavailable in the 14th century. Furthermore, the synthetic image disintegrated after a few hours, while the shroud has survived for centuries. The irony is that the more technology advances, the more unique the shroud has proven to be. In 2022, an AI trained on millions of images of medieval crucifixes attempted to generate a digital replica. The result? A stylized image, but without the forensic complexity of the original. Even an attempt to use deepfakes to simulate a body disappearing into the fabric failed. The process generated digital distortions incompatible with the texture of the linen. Why does this matter? Because the shroud defies not only history, but the very definition of art and science. If a medieval forger created something that surpasses our technology, he would be not only a genius, but a prophet, able to foresee medical and physical discoveries centuries ahead of his time. Some theorize that the shroud is irreproducible by design. If its image was formed by a single event, like the resurrection, it would, by definition, be impossible to replicate. Others see it as a warning. Some mysteries are not meant to be solved, but contemplated. In the next installment, we'll explore the cultural impact of the shroud, from bestsellers to films, and how it shapes human faith and imagination even in a skeptical age. The Shroud of Turin isn't just an artifact, it's a cultural phenomenon. From the catacombs of Rome to trending topics on Twitter, it has inspired art, conspiracies, and debates that transcend centuries. In the 14th century, when the Shroud first surfaced in Lille, France, it was already a sensation. Medieval churches displayed replicas of it in stained glass windows and tapestries, while preachers used its image to reinforce devotion. But it wasn't until the 21st century that the Shroud became a pop icon. In 2003, Dan Brown made it the centerpiece of the Da Vinci Code, suggesting that the image was a secret message from Jesus and Mary Magdalene. The book sold 80 million copies, catapulting the Shroud into the mainstream and attracting both curiosity seekers and critics alike. Film has also embraced the mystery. Films like The Turin Shroud, 2008, and History Channel documentaries have explored theories that the Shroud is evidence of extraterrestrial contact or an ancient energy weapon. Even Netflix has jumped on the bandwagon with Unsolved Mysteries, dedicating an episode to the debate between scientists and believers. But it's on social media that the Shroud has taken on a new life. On TikTok, videos with the hashtag Shroud of Turin have racked up millions of views, mixing science and speculation. One creator used AI to reconstruct the face of the man on the Shroud, going viral among UFO enthusiasts. Another compared the bloodstains to machine learning algorithms, arguing that only a higher intelligence could create such precise patterns. This duality, faith versus science, fact versus fiction, makes the Shroud a mirror of modern society. In 2021, a survey found that 35% of young Americans believe the Shroud is authentic, even if they don't follow traditional religions. To them, it represents an unsolved mystery in an age of instant answers. Even fashion has embraced it. In 2023, the Italian brand Dolce & Gabbana launched a collection inspired by the Shroud, using distressed fabrics and prints that reproduce the image of the man. Critics called it blasphemy. Fans called it transcendental art. But its most profound impact is on digital spirituality. Channels like Shroud TV on YouTube analyze every fiber of the cloth for millions of viewers, while the faithful organize virtual pilgrimages to the Shroud via Google Earth. In 2020, during the pandemic, a live stream of the Shroud on YouTube reached 20 million people, a record for a relic. Why does this fascination persist? Perhaps because the Shroud is a symbol of paradoxes: science versus miracle, proof versus faith, past versus future. It challenges generations to question their limits, and it is in this space between the known and the inexplicable that human culture reinvents itself. In the next section, we will conclude our journey with a final reflection. Is the Shroud an answer or an invitation to ask more? After centuries of analysis, the Shroud of Turin remains a living enigma. Whether you see it as a sacred relic, a medieval hoax, or a scientific paradox, its true power lies in its unanswered questions. To the believer, it is a silent testimony to the resurrection, a shroud marked by an event that divides history into before and after. To the skeptic, it is a puzzle that challenges science to evolve. But both agree, the Shroud does not leave us indifferent. It forces us to confront our own mortality. The torture marks on the cloth are a universal reminder of human suffering, while the indecipherable image whispers, "There are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in our philosophy." The Shroud story also reveals our hunger for meaning. In an age of algorithms and digital certainties, it endures as a symbol of mystery, something that technology cannot explain, but that the human imagination cannot shake. What if its ultimate lesson is about humility? Science admits it doesn't have all the answers. Faith acknowledges that transcendence can't be proven. It can be experienced. And art? It reminds us that sometimes the beautiful and the inexplicable are the same thing. In the end, the Shroud isn't just about Jesus, carbon-14, or conspiracy theories. It's about us, about our search for connection with the divine, our need for answers, and our fascination with the mysteries that unite us, believers and skeptics alike, on the same journey. So when you turn off this video, remember, the Shroud of Turin doesn't need to be solved. It's already served its purpose. It's made you think. If this journey intrigued you, share this video, subscribe to explore other mysteries, and comment. What do you think the Shroud really is? After all, the biggest question in history still awaits its answer.